Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning news and politics show for Indiana. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. Another big week in the news as the U.S.-Israel war in Iran has entered its third week. There were primary elections in 3 states on Tuesday, new developments in the Epstein files, and a whole lot of Indiana news to discuss in the back half of the show. We've got a couple great guests here with us to have those conversations. But first, a little help from you if you can. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We don't have advertisers. And we certainly don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we do not hide valuable information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even to our financial detriment. So please, if you find value in this work, and it is a lot of work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the progressive media infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you, that's okay. You can still subscribe for free. And you can help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making the state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at who'sleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at and tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let's welcome our guests. First, up in Fort Wayne, first time on the Sunday morning show with us, there's House District 81 candidate Sharon Wight. Sharon, welcome.
Good morning, Scott.
Good to have you here. Glad to have you for the Sunday show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, current events.
They're coming at us fast and furious these days. So, especially with this war thing, it's good to have a veteran with us to discuss these topics. And we've got Chuck Gill, Navy vet and vice chair of the Hancock County Democratic Party. Chuck, welcome back.
Hi, Scott and Sharon. Thank you for having me on this morning. Looking forward to a good conversation.
So glad to have you both with us, and glad to have all of you out there live watching on Facebook, YouTube, and of course at progressiveindiana.net. So let's go ahead and get into this thing. And of course, we've got to start with the big news of the week, and as it has been the big news for the last couple weeks, war on Iran. So this week, as you know, things are bad, especially when old Foghorn Leghorn, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, is apologizing. He expressed regret for a U.S. strike that killed 175 people, mostly children, at an Iranian girls' school after President Trump suggested, incorrectly, that it was actually an enemy misfire. Trump has been lying his ass off and running cover all week, referring to the conflict alternately as a war and as a little excursion. A little excursion is an afternoon ziplining when your cruise ship docks at a port of call, not an armed confrontation that has now killed over 2,000 people across the region, including American troops. Trump said he's willing to accept more American deaths to finish the job, and he got just that, the military announcing a refueling aircraft crashed in Iraq, killing 6 service members. The administration is now weighing sending more forces to secure Iran's nuclear stockpile, and they've already deployed 2,200 Marines to the area after a secret briefing that spooked Democratic senators into warning Trump is on a path to a full ground invasion. Meanwhile, Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, made his first public statement this week, vowing vengeance, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened to remove the younger Khamenei as well, saying strikes will continue to try to give the Iranian people the space needed to take to the streets. In addition to continued strikes on Iran, Israel is also reportedly planning a massive ground invasion of Lebanon, where nearly 800 people have already been killed and 800,000 displaced. Chuck, let me have your perspective on this war as we enter the third week as a
Yeah, this has been kind of a tough one because the fact that there's this conversation on whether it's a war or excursion or whatever the hell that even means. The fact that our own, Congress didn't decide to step in, didn't decide to reassert their control over the idea of the president starting a war and keeping us engaged in it. They could have ended this almost straight out. However, defer to the chief. To the God King. He knows what's going on. Well, he doesn't. He doesn't have a bloody clue what he's got us started into. And this is the exact. To me, this is like Iraq all over again post 9/11. I mean, it's the almost exact same circumstances. Oh, well, they're doing this, or well, we're going to accuse them of that, or whatever. Iran is one of those nation states that you can't take you can't underestimate them. Because they may not have a lot, but they know how to hurt things pretty bloody quickly, and we're seeing that as things are going along. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to go off on a huge soapbox here, but yeah, this is as a veteran, having been in those areas, I know what these sailors and what our forces are going through right now, and the impacts of this are going to go on for decades afterwards, even if we find some way to get ourselves out of this mess quickly, which I don't see happening.
And they seem to, like you said, they underestimated Iran. Like, if you go back, let's talk about this war versus excursion thing, right? Technically, we haven't formally declared war in this country since World War II. We've had a whole hell of a lot of excursions between then and now. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq twice, Kosovo. I'm forgetting, Panama, Grenada, whatever. Like they're all over the place. But if our service members are dying, it doesn't matter what you call it. And Iran is much more capable militarily and more populated and more powerful than any of those other places we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's the thing of it. I mean, when you look at all the things we've done, we didn't even declare war after 9/11, although we called it the global war on terror, which,
global excursion on terror.
And again, I come back to, okay, one of the generals had talked about where this is a major combat operation. That is probably more apropos, so to say, of what's actually transpiring. But something you hit on just a second ago about we're moving Marines into position. If you are mobilizing a expeditionary unit, that means it's about to get real ugly real fast, because those aren't folks you just say, oh, just go and be in the area. No, you don't do that. Trust me, I have, again, seen those areas firsthand when those Marines come in, because they're not the let's just sit around and twiddle our thumbs group. No, yeah. They're the ones that go in and make stuff happen.
And Sharon, Netanyahu says this is to give the Iranian people space to go out into the streets. I don't know. If I'm an Iranian, I'm certainly not going out into the streets while there are bombs falling.
No, absolutely not. And if I'm an Iranian, I worry. Going back, I was a teenager when Iraqi freedom happened. And there were all of these conversations when I was a teenager about, sleeper cells in the Middle East and, radicalizing people. And I don't see how this action doesn't just continue to do that with another generation of people from the Middle East. Mm-hmm. I am not someone who is at all versed in military action. I was raised by people who were pacifists. My dad did serve in the Army, but he served in the Army during the early 1980s when we just didn't have a lot going on, and most of his service was in Augusta, Georgia. And he was a ROTC kid, so he went directly into being a captain. Never to my knowledge, deployed. But my dad did get very close to actually going to Iraq in 2010 because he worked for ITT. And I remember even at that point being scared that my father was going to be going to Iraq, because even though things were relatively from the outside, quote unquote, stable at that point, again, remember, I have very little military knowledge. I still didn't love the fact that my dad was potentially going to be going to that part of the world. My dad had spent some time in Saudi Arabia when I was a child, when things were relatively calm there. He always told me he was testing radios. I don't know if that's actually what he was doing. To this day, my dad passed away in 2010, which was, I think, a big part of the reason why he didn't end up going to Iraq. But I just, like Chuck was saying, this just feels so similar to what we were being told in 2003. And it begs the question of what I've been saying for 3 weeks is, why are we even doing this? This didn't seem necessary right now. And specifically, why Iran? Because was it just finally time? Like we've hit all of the other countries, and so now it's time to finally hit Iran. And I don't agree with it. We'll put that out there. And it's just
yes.
Well, Sharon, and answer your question as to why, it's because Netanyahu tricked Trump into doing this crap. Trump has been the only dumb one in the last 30 years to actually go with Netanyahu on this stuff. Netanyahu's had this pipe dream about attacking Iran for I don't know, ever. And
he's been saying they're like 2 weeks away from having a nuclear warhead for 30 years now.
But we obliterated all that stuff before, right? I mean,
right there. Yeah. Last June, didn't we?
Where did I miss it?
Right.
Yeah. So
I was having that conversation last night too, where did we obliterate it, or does it still exist? Like is it Schrodinger's nuclear arsenal?
Well, apparently it is.
Look at I want to zoom out and but beyond the battlefield and talk about this sort of international consequences of this burgeoning world war that we've got on our hands here. So on Monday, President Trump and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin discussed ending both the Iran and Ukraine conflicts. Yet simultaneously, Russia is supplying Iran with intelligence and the locations of American troops and equipment. They've denied it, of course, but Trump stooge and special envoy Steve Witkoff insists, quote, we can take them at their word. Russia has actually come out ahead in all of this chaos, with sanctions on Russian oil lifted thanks to rising fuel prices worldwide. Meanwhile, Ukraine's air defense technologies are buckling under strain as U.S. supplies get funneled into the Middle East. Despite Trump's poor treatment of our Ukrainian allies, his administration is now begging Ukraine for the anti-drone technology we dismissed last year. They've become quite adept at fighting off Iranian-made Shahed drones in their war with Russia, while U.S. forces have struggled against them since this conflict began. Europe is furious at Trump for giving the Russian sanctions relief, while Trump's furious at Europe's mixed response to the war. On the other side of the world, U.S. relations with Asian allies are also under strain as Japan, South Korea, and others are scrambling to address the oil crisis with zero guidance from the Americans. And to top it off, U.S. consulates have come under attack in Pakistan, Norway, and even in Canada. Chuck, I don't know where do you want to begin there, but last week in this space, we talked about how some folks in the Trump administration are tossing around this idea of having the Kurds be the ground forces that go into Iran. Like, this is a group of people we've strung along in various conflicts for years and years and years. And I feel like now we're doing the same thing to the Ukrainians with this drone stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely not wrong. And again, this is where this scattershot thing of this quote administration, I use that term very loosely because they're administrating nothing. The idea of discounting our allies has been something Trump has done from day one, almost hour one, because he doesn't see anybody that doesn't follow his exact lead as an ally. So he's made a point of saying, well, Ukraine, you don't know what you're talking about. I know better than you are. And that fits his, and that if you look at it, it fits his persona because he knows everything about everything. So when you look at the drone strikes and where Ukraine can offer us some practical inside knowledge on how to deal with these things, our people should be taking advantage of that and saying, hey, cool. Now that you're giving us this information, let us help you fend off this more, the Putin moron. But again, Putin has played Trump like a fiddle, just like Netanyahu. Putin has been able to say, if you could get rid of my sanctions, I'll be nicer. And yet what does he do? He applies more force. And again, it's this, counterintuitive. There we go. That was the phrase I was looking for, of how Trump can be manipulated by a little bit of praise, a little bit of here's some money, or a little bit of this. And boy, he's happy as a pig and stuff. I missed a point I wanted to touch on just during our first part. The strike on the girls' school. This is one of those things where we screwed up. I mean, and I'm not advocating that we're human, we err. I get it, but no other state has those weapons. We screwed up, and if we don't acknowledge that, if Trump can't acknowledge we screwed up and own that, what little moral standing we have left in the world is going to be gone. I mean, I realize it's infinitesimal at this point, but it's just an example of mistake. The girls' school not paying attention to Russia's influences with Iran, not paying attention to the Ukrainians who know. I mean, they've survived so much. They're kicking Russia's butt most of the time, and yet they're dealing with very little. I mean, why we wouldn't want to listen to that kind of resources beyond me.
Sharon, to Chunk's point, Trump has never apologized in his life for anything. I don't think he's incapable of it. But the Russia hoax, right? The Russian collusion. Trump is secretly working for Putin. It seems like a conspiracy theory, but my God, everything the guy does, whether intentionally or unintentionally, seems to benefit Putin and the Russians.
100% it does. Or at the absolute best, it doesn't seem to benefit our allies, right? Going back to what Chuck said about our moral standing in the world, if we keep referring to our allies, and I question on the regular if we even have our allies anymore, because we are constantly doing things that fly in the face of all of the tradition that we have established over, in some cases, the last 250 years, in other cases, closer to the last 100 years. But a lot of what we are doing is completely abnormal and it flies directly in the face of everything that we tried to do during the Cold War, during the Vietnam War, all of the things that we tried to do that were directly against Russia. Now it really does genuinely seem like Russia and Israel are our top friends, and everybody else is not. And I think that we all know that. I mean, we know that Israel's up there, right? We absolutely know Russia is the quiet part that we haven't quite said out loud, like saying things like we trust, or we can take Russia at their word. The fact that that's a sentence that is even being uttered by a member of the administration in 2026 is, I'm not sure I have a strong enough word for it. But again, it's like we live in the Twilight Zone right now. It's like we live in the Twilight Zone, and we live in 2003 and in the 1960s all over again. And I struggle a lot with all of this that we are dealing with. And again, it does. I make a make a joke. It's not really a joke, that it just seems like there are certain world powers that have turned this into a life-size risk game. Like they've just decided that the world is their risk game, and they are going to, just finally pull the plug and play it out the way that they've decided they want to play it out.
Yeah, and in many ways, I think we're sort of looking at this thing through old like nation state lenses, and these folks, the Russians, the Israelis, the Saudis, there are nodes within those countries that are part of a large international organized crime ring, and they've with all the money that is involved, they've sort of superseded the nation state as the entities with the most power in this world. So most Americans, I think, are spared the horrors of war, and it seems like we in a way can like tune it out because we're so removed from it. It never happens on our soil, but we've been at war since, it seems like on and off forever. And, we can tune it out until the economic pain starts to come home, right? And the Trump administration badly underestimated the war's impact on the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, and also a lot of the world's chemicals that are ingredients in fertilizer, which is very important as we go into like planting season here. And energy prices have spiked globally. It also doesn't help that Israeli airstrikes hit Iranian oil facilities, causing toxic oily rain to fall over Tehran, even angering the U.S., who asked Israel to back off hitting Iran's energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, the U.S. struck mine-laying vessels in the strait. Iran targeted the infrastructure of U.S. Gulf allies, including data centers in the Emirates and desalination plants in Bahrain. And for the first time since the war started, Iran appears to have conducted a significant cyber attack against a U.S. company. Iran's escalated attacks on regional infrastructure and transport networks have sent energy prices soaring, and while dozens of countries released some 400 million barrels from their strategic reserves, crude prices have barely budged. All of this comes as energy and food prices in the U.S. already surged in February, and that's before any of this Iran fighting even kicked into gear. So, listen, Sharon, if you want to look at this from a completely selfish standpoint for most Americans, I don't care what's going on over there. Well, you're going to care. It's going to hit you in the pocketbook.
If it hasn't, it should have hit you already when we watched gas jump literally, 70 cents, 80 cents a gallon in the last 2 weeks, going to that news about the oily rain that rained over. That goes back to the moral standing that we were talking about, right? Because even if you want to make the argument that you don't care what happens to Iranians, if you want to, which we're not making that argument, but even if you wanted to make that argument, you cannot discount the fact that eventually is going to make it into the environment all around the world. And so that is a moral failing of those strikes. That is a environmental failing of those strikes. And that is a strategic failing in a lot of ways, because again, like you're going to make people sick, and we're not going to know who was made sick and in what part of the world who is going to become sick as a result of that. It's going to take decades, just like we've seen in the fallout from the dropping the nuclear bombs in Japan and Chernobyl, and the different things that we've
Vietnam
seen,
and Agent Orange, right. And
exactly. It takes decades for those things to rise, and then there's these big questions of, well, why do we have this spike? Well, it's something that happened in the environment, and no one's going to track that. I do find it the only amusement, if I can say amusement, I've gotten out of all of this is the cyber attack that I've heard about is apparently the Iranian military they've either threatened to do it or they've already done it, where they are going to start wiping credit card debt. That is, and I don't know how much of this is true, but there is at least the very least a rumor going around that because they have access to data centers, because they have certain access to American data infrastructure, because we have some of that overseas, they might start wiping some of the American credit card debt. And, you know, if with everything going on, if you can find even like the slimmest of silver linings in anything, I guess that is it.
That's one way to turn the tide and get the folks on the home front, you know, to question loyalties. Chuck, I want to read one more thing here, and then I'm going to toss it to you. So, you know, kind of along those lines, you know, with the economic fallout, and all that. Some, you know, you need someone else to blame, right? If you're feeling it, and God, you know, God forbid, the Iranians start wiping out credit card debt, you know, people are going to look at them as the good guys. So, well, Trump, the administration can't possibly have that, and so this week we're starting to see, you know, things coalesce around the development of this narrative of an internal enemy. So, on the home front, violence erupted as a Lebanese American attacked a synagogue in Michigan after losing several family members in Israeli airstrikes on Lebanon. Fortunately, only the attacker died, though some first responders were treated for smoke inhalation. Meanwhile, at Old Dominion University in Virginia, a gunman there, who had previously been convicted of supporting ISIS, walked into a classroom and shot and killed an ROTC instructor, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, before students in the classroom took down the shooter. All of this occurred as inflammatory rhetoric from Republican lawmakers poisoned the discourse. Representative Andy Ogles says Muslims don't belong in the U.S. Representative Randy Fine compared Muslims to dogs, and Senator Tommy Tuberville, perhaps the dumbest man in the Senate, and with Markwayne Mullin leaving, you know, it's pretty much running away with this thing. Tuberville shared a post calling all Muslims the enemy. Now, New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani said he supported peaceful protest after last weekend counter-protesters at an anti-Muslim rally planted IEDs. The timing here raises uncomfortable questions, with a Trump administration full of liars and Russia sympathizers and Putin's documented history of orchestrating false flags. Can Americans, Chuck, even trust that any of these incidents are organic?
I would, on a gut check feeling, I would say no. And the reason I say that is because in different spaces, there are threats that are some organic, some that are state actor driven. The cyber attacks that Iran is carrying out, that was on, you know, Stryker Medical, which that's a huge impact on U.S. operations. There have also been threats to, utility infrastructure that they're trying to infiltrate and trying to cause chaos with that. So, and then to say that some of these other, the spurring of this anti-Muslim, anti-foreigner, anti-everything, not us, which again, we could get into a whole other debate on that whole topic. But the fact that you have sitting congresspeople espousing some of the most bigoted language that one can use. And I'm sorry. I mean, I don't care if you dislike somebody or not. There's just certain things that are not permissible, period, end of story. And we should be better than that. And for a long time, we were our better selves. But now that Trump has enabled these people to be their worst selves, I mean, you're seeing, I've seen so much in this year that just totally fly in the face of everything that I have ever learned or believed of myself as an American. And the fact that all this is happening, they're kind of grouping people together. And I wanted to touch on this part of saying that, if you say all Muslims are bad or all of these people are bad or all of that people are bad, okay, why? What's your end purpose of that? And that's just to create fear, to say, hey, I have the solution because we're going to get rid of these quote bad people. Well, how has that worked out thus far? I mean, we've got internment camps in our country of our own citizens, resonating back to World War II with the Japanese internment camps then. I mean, Sharon drew a perfect comparison between what is happening post either lead up in or ending of World War II and into some of our subsequent issues. We as Americans we're a young country. We've only been around for 250 years. I mean, we're challenging countries that have been around for thousands. And we keep thinking we're going to tell them what to do. No. And they're going to come back and when you challenge somebody's deeply held feelings, or like this gentleman that did the assault at ODU. I mean, I worked literally right near ODU's campus at a wastewater treatment plant. I mean, right literally down the road. So that hit home for me. I was like, my God, but it's the prime example that we are doing so much damage to ourselves because of our stupidity overseas and what we're allowing things to happen. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. I hate to use that expression, but it's very realistic.
No, and this rogue regime is putting us all in danger, and the same way that Netanyahu in Israel likes to claim falsely that they are representative of all the world's Jews, and that what they do is keeping the world Jewish population safer. And in actuality, his behavior is endangering the Jewish population in places like Detroit, where that guy went in. Sharon, I'll give you the final word on the Iran story before we turn the corner here.
Well, I want to touch back on something that Chuck just said, where these countries, even if they weren't formalized, the people that have lived in these countries have lived there for thousands of years and have had these conflicts for thousands of years. And we're going in and we're trying to undo something that has been there for thousands of years, when it's not even something we don't understand the cultural implications. We don't understand the ethnic implications. We don't understand the religious implications. And we're trying to go in and make demands when we don't even understand the demands that we're making. And that is quite possibly the fundamental issue here, is that we're going in and we're trying to put our thumb on this issue when we don't even fully understand it. And in some ways, I think we've decided we don't want to understand it. And that is just such a huge issue. And one thing that I know that we had wanted to get to that I don't think we have time to get to, is the religious aspect of this from the American side, which we have seen in the news, that we're seeing that Pete Hegseth and others are basically trying to bring forth the Armageddon of Revelation. And not fully understanding what they're actually doing.
Well, I guess we'll have to leave Iraq there, or wow, geez, or we'll have to leave Iran there. But again, this touches every aspect of American life. Like with the economic fallout from this thing is rippling through American household. Fuel prices spiking, fertilizer shortages are going to drive up food costs come this summer. Well, the Trump administration is actively undermining any affordability agenda. They're suing California over fuel-efficient vehicles during an oil crisis, deprioritizing a bipartisan Elizabeth Warren-Tim Scott housing bill passed by the Senate in favor of the vote-suppressing, quote, Save America Act. And even this week, they settled with Live Nation over monopoly abuses instead of actually prosecuting them. So if you're hoping to catch a concert this summer to escape the chaos, well, you're getting gouged there, too. So inflammatory rhetoric targeting Muslims distracts from the fact that Trump's undermining working Americans at every turn while his billionaire buddies in California spend to protect their exorbitant fortunes from a proposed wealth tax there. Sharon, I'm going to come back to you here. Am I seeing this right? Do Trump and his MAGA allies want us mad at everybody else but them while they are actively picking our pockets?
It's true what it seems like, right? Now, the Live Nation one really is humorous isn't the right word, but it's the one that I have, because a very well-known MAGA sympathizer, Kid Rock, has been known to go against Ticketmaster, go against Live Nation, sell tickets on his own platforms because of the price gouging practices that these companies do. And yet this administration is not following in the footsteps of someone who is a known MAGA sympathizer. That makes absolutely no sense. It literally seems like it goes back to what Chuck said earlier. It seems like there's no agenda, that they're just trying different things to see what kind of sticks, while at the same time, the only thing that's sticking is money not in our pocketbooks. Mm-hmm. Everything that we are paying for is being driven up in cost. There are no costs that are going down. And it just doesn't make sense that there's nothing that they're standing up for us. And at the same time, people are still standing up for this administration. I also found it incredibly interesting that they passed that Senate passed the House affordability bill that is going to have issues in the House. It's like it goes back to a fundamental issue, I think, that we've been seeing in Congress for a long time, where they're not working together. They're not engaging in both bipartisanship and bichambership. And they're not functioning.
And Chuck, I don't know, like, to what Sharon spoke about, it's a distraction, and we've got this consolidation in multiple industries. We have not just the concert tickets and everything, and the media is a certain problem. Seeking Reason over on Progressive Indiana Network on Substack Live mentioned the media consolidation. It's you got a handful of people just sort of consolidating everything. We've got the same sort of oligarch problem developing here that they have over in Russia, and when you have consolidation and monopoly, individuals like us have less purchasing power, and everything's going to be more expensive. And we've gotten used to in this country it being really comfortable. We're not willing to like sacrifice anymore. If you look at like World War II and like rationing and stuff, can you imagine asking us to do that now? People would be they wouldn't know what to do with themselves.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting point of that. We talk about disconnection with the everyday, where folks may not care what's happening overseas, but look at the direct impacts and results. Energy costs, electrical costs are going through the freaking ceiling, but that's also due to a multitude of problems. You have certain companies being taken over by private equity firms that are jacking things up left, right, and sideways, and the government's not blocking those things like should be. You have the oil impacts that are affecting not only fuel prices, but it's going to affect darn near everything else in the environment or in our
in the whole economy. Everything has to be transported. So much of what we have here is transported via truck.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So add your fuel cost, to everything.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then look at, okay, they want to build more houses, right? They're talking about we want to build. Okay, hold up just a heartbeat. One, transportation. You've got to get lumber from point A to point B. Well, if diesel is over $5 a gallon that I saw yesterday, okay, that just jacked up the cost of framing. Not to mention the infrastructure to build for water, sanitary, electric lines, fiber communications. All of those things are going to be impacted. Just like, I mean, if they think that 2020 was bad, I hate to tell them it's going to be worse now, and it's going to be worse for a lot longer. And this is a bad situation setting up in the utility space because there are a lot of mandates that are kicking in 2027 that, again, is kind of going unnoticed, and what that is going to do to the landscape of prices and affordability. So it is a huge, huge conversation that's getting manipulated, I guess is probably.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the electric utilities and that a little bit more on the Indiana half of the show. But I want to move on because, you know, amidst all this, there's still like elections going on this week. So I mentioned Trump's reticence to push forward the housing affordability legislation while prioritizing the deceptively named Save America Act. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is resisting Trump's demands to push it through, while on the other end of the Capitol, House Speaker Mike Johnson is convening a GOP meeting to discuss election year strategy and figure out how to retain the chamber despite their poor record and anti-incumbent sentiment. One California congressman switched to independent after his district was redrawn, recognizing the Republican brand is toxic. But will it matter? And will this year's general election be conducted freely and fairly? Trump continues to stoke election conspiracies, and this week the FBI seized 2020 election records in Arizona, just as they had previously done in Atlanta. Now, still, like I said, actual elections happened this week in Mississippi, New Hampshire, and in Georgia, where one Trump-backed candidate and a Democrat advanced to a runoff in a special election for Marjorie Taylor Greene's old seat. Lots of candidates involved in that one. And finally, in election news this week, 85-year-old South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn announced in a change of heart that he will seek re-election this November. After all, and I'm going to start there at the back, and we can sort of work our way back to that. I'm tired of these geriatric Democrats sticking around too long. It's time to turn over things to another generation. We do not need to be sending 85-year-olds back to the house. We need to be sending them to a home. and Sharon, I will start with you there.
Yes, it is. Even just their home, they deserve to take a nap. And they have served their country well. It is incredibly frustrating that this is something that keeps happening, and I feel like one of the questions that we aren't asking enough is why. I mean, I think there's all kinds of theories as to why it keeps happening, right? There's pension theories, there's healthcare theories, there's potential that they want to continue to make a change. They feel like they're the only one that can make the change, whatever. And then there's the possibility that they're scared that once they leave, things are going to come back out about them that they don't like. Like those are a pile of the different theories that could potentially exist. And it is just, as someone who is almost 40 years old and feels like the people who are a little bit older than me and certainly a little bit younger than me have not really gotten to start having our chance because these individuals will not leave. It's just incredibly frustrating, especially because they don't have a good thumb on technology and how technology impacts day-to-day lives, how economic growth really is impacting day-to-day lives of individuals. Who knows the last time some of these kind of elder individuals have even regularly lived in the places that they're supposed to represent. And these are all issues that I just find to be so significant and just incredibly frustrating. And there's a reason why there's a retirement age for everybody else, right? It's because it gets to a point where you can't make decisions effectively. And I saw that earlier this week and I was incredibly frustrated. It's like like our words are going into deaf ears.
And like you mentioned, Clyburn has done a lot of good work. He's a stalwart champion of civil rights. But he's been there since like the mid 80s. He's again done a lot of good work in his career, but he's been out of touch for the last 10 to 15 years. And, it seems like Democrats are set up to have a really big blue wave election this year if we can, quit getting in our own way. Now, Chuck, that blue wave only comes, I suppose, if we actually have free and fair elections this year. And you see with this Arizona thing, they're stoking those same conspiracy theories. They seized those voting records in Georgia a few weeks ago. What are they up to here? What are they trying to do?
It's the seeds of distraction, and what they are trying to do is to confuse people more and more each day by throwing all these things, all these conspiracy theories, all these, oh, well, these people did this, or we think this thing happened here, or yada, 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 and distracting from the reality of what really transpired and what the real threats are. We know Russia attempted to interfere in our elections. We know that. I would not put it past that Iran and Russia might not team up to execute some kind of false flag operation moving into, the midterms. Right now, anything is possible. But I will say that the federal government cannot take over state elections. There's just not a way to do that. So I think we could, and we need to say that more and more so people understand the reality of what can or can't happen. But going back to something that Sharon was saying about, these people have, served forever and a year, but we can fix that. And I think that's where our next generation is really starting to resonate. Like some of our more progressive, our progressive candidates are saying we need term limits. Let it set at 8 years or 12 years, whatever makes sense. I mean, pick your number. I would say no more than 12, but that's just my personal opinion. But there has to be a transitional phasing to bring new ideas in, or we're never going to change where we are, because where we are is where we've been. And it's because of these folks that will not let go and hold on to these outdated methodologies. I mean, that's why I'm excited about what's his name? Oh, guy who just won, or who's in the runoff race there in Georgia. Anyway.
Yeah.
Army vet. Sorry, my brain's or Harris. Sorry,
Harris, yeah.
I had a brain fart. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It's the vet thing. It happens. But I'm excited because he's bringing a new energy. I think that will be very interesting if he wins, because he's an Army vet. He has a very strong platform. I think that is the right energy that is needed in that race. Now, if we can just start duplicating that along all these other lines, we will start getting somewhere. So,
yeah. So, I guess I want to turn the corner. One of the reasons we're expecting a wave election this year is because people across the political spectrum are upset about the Epstein cover-up. And there was a bombshell investigation this week by the Charleston Post and Courier, which verified key details in the story of a woman who accused Donald Trump of abusing her as a 13-year-old girl. Meanwhile, prison guard Tova Noel, who was on duty the night Epstein died, has come under scrutiny after being flagged by Chase Bank for thousands in suspicious cash and Zelle deposits to her account in the months leading up to his death. The largest payment of $5,000 occurring just days before he died. Another inmate on that unit told the FBI he overheard guards discussing a cover-up on the morning of the convicted human trafficker's death, with one saying, quote, "If he is dead, we're going to cover it up." Speaking of cover-ups, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer let slip in a Fox News interview that Trump's first administration ordered an end to an investigation at Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico in 2019. Comer's committee this week hosted Epstein's accountant Richard Kahn for a closed-door deposition, who claimed he saw no red flags in Epstein's spending, but one Democratic lawmaker in the hearing, Suhas Subramaniam of Virginia, says Kahn revealed at least one Trump accuser has received money from the Survivor Fund managed by Kahn. Elsewhere in corruption news at Trump's DOJ, congressional Democrats are demanding for an investigation into a troubling pattern of legal wins by Attorney General Pam Bondi's defense attorney. Brother, Chuck, what? Just the cover up never ends. The scandal never ends. It seems every week there's a new revelation. This network goes deep. I don't like Epstein had his fingers in like all of the various threads that are coming together now to deliver us to an authoritarian America.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's overwhelming. The amount of just atrocities sounds like such a inadequate term for all this that has gone on and has been allowed to go on or been covered up for. I mean, the fact I had a malfunction with the idea that this information is there about the guards saying we're going to cover this up and we're going to do all these things, or it never happened, and yet they call it unsubstantiated, but yet there's records of it. Now, I mean, again, make it make sense, and all these other things are happening to take the eye off the ball of what these crimes that were committed. And I've said it for a long time. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, I don't care if they did the wrong things. If they hurt children, take them out, be done with them. Now, I know there's supposed to be a criminal process and community corrections and those kind of things. I'm a little bit more hardline when it comes to that kind of context. I think that people that do those things or hurt animals should be dealt with in a very straightforward type of reality. That's just me.
Just put them in the general population and let nature take its course.
That's a fair idea. I like that. But anyway, it's and I kind of think about like, what would if my daughter went through something like this, God forbid. I know where my instinct as a father would be. I can't understand why these people that have children do not understand this. I can't process that. I just have no way to do it.
This whole thing is so twisted and messed up, and like we talked about a couple segments ago, I mentioned the vast authoritarian criminal organized crime network with nodes in Saudi Arabia and Israel and Russia. And well, look, Epstein had contacts that are part of that network in Israel and Russia and in Europe. And I don't know, Sharon. I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I can't help but feel like it's all tied together.
You stole my line. That's exactly where I was going to go with this. It seems way too convenient, especially like especially looking at the connection right now that the US government seems to have with Israel specifically, and the connection that Epstein had with Israel specifically, because we know that Ghislaine Maxwell and her father had a direct connection with Mossad. Like, that is not a conspiracy at all. We know that connection existed. And so it is, we almost need to find a different word than conspiracy, because it's like there's just a lot of really clear things happening here. And then we see the arrests that are happening in other countries, or the resignations that are happening in other countries. So places like the UK and Norway are willing to admit that there are, or at least the people that live there. Well, I mean, obviously, former Prince Andrew was arrested, and other individuals have stepped down in the UK. And then there was the individual in Norway who stepped down. And so, like, things may not come out from the United States, but I think that we're going to start seeing more coming out from these other places where and this goes back to U.S. morality, right? We have claimed the moral high ground for so long, which again, going back to the fact that we're only 250 years old, not really that long. But we've claimed this moral high ground, and now we are not claiming it anymore. And I actually want to go back to something we said in the last segment, where we were talking about how long certain individuals have been in office. Some of these individuals that have been in office for 40, 50 years, that's 1/5 of this experiment, which to me is just absolutely insane, and probably a big part of why things like Epstein have been allowed to happen, and why we're seeing some of the fear that we're seeing from some of these older generation individuals, because they're really genuinely afraid of what is going to come out, even if it was ancillary. I allowed this to happen. I maybe didn't take part of it, but I definitely allowed it to happen.
Yeah, it's a big club, and we ain't in it. And I think we're all starting to realize that, and we are pissed at the big club. Let's turn from Trump's corrupt DOJ to his corrupt DHS. So it's a mixed bag this week at the Department of Homeland Security. The limited DHS shutdown continues with no end in sight as Democrats and Republicans remain at odds over funding conditions. It's mostly affecting TSA and folks at airports at this point, because ICE and Border Patrol were well funded in last year's big stupid bill act. So on the positive side, a federal judge limited ICE's use of crowd control devices in Portland, ruling that federal officers must identify themselves and stop using excessive force like pepper balls and tear gas on nonviolent protesters. Now, immigration detention cases have also declined amid the Trump administration's minimal pullback from their hardline tactics that they had been using in Minnesota, but that's infuriating his MAGA allies, who are lobbying Trump to keep deportations at an increased level. Down in Texas at Camp East Montana, the sprawling tented concentration camp, detention center, a new contractor has been awarded a no-bid contract to operate the facility after outbreaks of tuberculosis and measles, as well as 3 deaths that have occurred under previous management. Sharon, did I slip by saying concentration camp there?
I don't know if you did. It certainly has certain historical parallels, doesn't it? And on top of that, I actually, an article came across my social media feed last night as I was thinking about what we were going to be discussing today. And apparently in ICE detention, there is supposed to be a limit on how long children are in ICE detention. It's supposed to be 20 days. And there are more than
that's still so long.
Right. Exactly. And there are more than 900 children that have been there for more than 20 days. And this is a decades-long legal settlement. And when I saw that, apparently, one of these children is someone who has severe autism, is a young man who has severe autism.
I saw this.
Yeah. And is just, as someone who I live my life as a disability advocate first, that just broke my heart. And children shouldn't be in detention camps anyway. We saw that with the little boy with bunny hats back in February, who still was in detention camp for 2 weeks? And got sick because he was a little boy among, all kinds of new germs and stress and depression because he was away from mom and dad. And so I realize I'm getting away from your actual articles here, but all of this is just cruel. It is just absolutely cruel, and goes back to, again, we keep using the word distraction this morning. And this is either another thing that is a distraction either from what they're actually doing behind the scenes. And I hate to call it that because it is so intense and so serious, but they're throwing so many things at us that we just can't we can't keep track of all of the terrible that is going on. And this one hits me particularly hard, everything to do with DHS and ICE, because I went to a high school that had a very significant immigrant population, and I loved it. So to think about the people that I might have gone to high school with being impacted by this, it's just it is really it's really hard. And the fact that people are still advocating for deporting people when they also don't seem to understand that those people tend to be the ones that do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. One of the most pivotal experiences I ever had was seeing a documentary in college called A Day Without a Mexican, or it was more of a mockumentary. And it just showed all of the different areas in the country that immigrant populations work that the rest of us have kind of decided we are quote unquote too good for.
Yeah. It's one thing you spoke about there, Sharon, and it the kind of everything all at once. That's the Steve Bannon flood the zone strategy. By the way, Steve Bannon also Epstein associate. Like, those guys had a long ongoing relationship, and to that effect, Chuck, it's like, I don't know if any of these things are a distraction. If anything is one is distracting from the other, it is all related, like we talked about.
Yeah, it's all symptoms of a larger failure, I guess is about the best term I can bring to it. Because I kept thinking about as Sharon was talking about all these topics, we have forgotten a very fundamental portion of who we are and what was enumerated in the Constitution of and justice for all. And I say it in that context because justice is not what's happening to these people that are being detained. Justice is not what's happening to our partner, overseas, and how we are, presenting ourselves. We're basically taking even the thought of fairness and being humane, just being human in the fact of understanding other humans' lives and struggles. We've taken that and thrown that completely out the window. So what are we then? If we don't have justice at the core of what we are, who the hell are we? And these people execute these things because they're covering up for each other. And they talk about, there's this cabal of people, and that QAnon crap. Well, hello, you're accusing of what exactly it is that's going on right now. Sorry.
The more things happen, it's like, oh man, they kind of had a point. I mean, they had the principles wrong, but the broad strokes were actually kind of sort of there. You mentioned, Chuck, that the and justice for all, and it really was it always just pretty words? There was never justice for all, right? It was always mostly just justice for the select few with a nice veneer. And to that effect, I wanted to sort of touch on who has actually had justice for them, and it was the tech oligarchs and the rich and the plutocrats and the Gilded Age and those folks, going back, the aristocrats, the landowners, the slaveholders, always justice for them, right? Well, a couple quick notes before we turn the corner here, and these are sort of related to what we're going to get into once we start talking about Indiana. But from a little bit ago in the election section, we mentioned Mississippi is one of the states that had primaries this past week. Well, also in the Magnolia State, the Department of Environmental Quality there approved a controversial project when Elon Musk's XAI company won a permit for the Colossus 2 data center powered by 41 methane gas turbines. Community members and environmental advocates are opposing it, citing hazardous air pollution concerns in South Haven. That's the community in northern Mississippi there. Meanwhile, in other tech news, Anthropic is suing the Trump administration over a Pentagon blacklist designation that would require defense contractors to certify they don't use Anthropic's Claude AI models in their work. This move came after Trump threatened the company for refusing to allow their technology to be used for mass surveillance and autonomous weapons systems. You know, like I said, big club, we ain't in it. Chuck, Elon Musk, perhaps the biggest member of the big club. The man's nearing $1 trillion in net worth. It's insanity.
Yeah, insanity again. When it seems like it kind of pales in comparison with this guy and his, just his ability and just the net worth that he has. But one thing I wanted to hit on with this Colossus 2 project with the methane gas turbine generators, the negative impact it is going to have to disadvantaged communities is, or just in not just them, but also the environment as a whole. I can't begin to describe how bad this is going to be, and it's solvable. This is the other dumb thing that I can't get around. If they want to build these generators, okay, fine, do it, but put in air pollution control systems. There are chemical scrubbers that, and I will attest to this, that we use in wastewater treatment all the time to eliminate H2S production and off-gassing of methane and nitrous oxide and all these things. That is an easy fix. Put it in place. He's got more than enough money to do that 1,000 times over. And it would reduce that threat to the environment, those threats to those people, to the people that live in those areas dramatically. But yet that thought isn't even being talked about. Oh, just let them do what to do.
And you know what kind of neighborhoods they're putting these things in, right? They find folks who don't have the resources to necessarily push back and stand up for themselves. South Haven as a community is like 40% black. This is, in northern Mississippi, which is just across the border from Memphis, Tennessee. In Memphis, he's got another data center there powered by like these methane generators right in a black neighborhood, is causing, massive air quality concerns there, getting people sick. Sharon, when are we going to tax these billionaires out of existence?
I wish I knew. This goes back to the thing that we've said a couple times, where it just seems anymore like the cruelty is the point. Like, it just seems like they keep trying to figure out different ways to become more and more cruel. And anytime, like Anthropic a couple weeks ago, I was like, okay, cool. You're fighting against the Pentagon by saying you're not going to allow this, and then you're turning around and you're suing them, which it's complicated, right? Because I can kind of understand why they're doing it from a certain perspective, because if they're quote unquote blacklisted from the government, then that makes it difficult for them to do business in other ways. It makes them look worse, et cetera, et cetera. But also, you had really good press when you said that you didn't want your LLM model to be used in the process of bombing people. And so you had really good press. So to turn around and then do this, which is going to give you not so great press for at least a certain subset of the population that's paying attention. Maybe it's the subset of the population that you want to pay attention. I don't know. But it is, I was very much cheering on Anthropic a couple weeks ago, and now I'm frustrated with them.
Well, it's costing them money, right? Still got to take care of the shareholders, just as any of these other companies do. Right. Like, hey, we don't want to do that. We still want to do bad stuff for the Department of War, but we don't want to do that bad stuff for the Department of War. Right. They're not really drawing a line in the sand so much as I don't know what they're doing. But I did want to. Yes, yeah. The thing about sand is you can easily, move that line very quickly. So,
absolutely.
I want to turn the corner here, and the AI, tech, and big business getting their way at the public expense is, once again our entry point this week to a segment I like to call the Crossroads, where major U.S. and Indiana themes intersect. And this week showed a troubling pattern of whose interests our state and local governments actually serve. So the Indianapolis NAACP reversed its stance on the Metro Blocks data center after the majority black Martindale Brightwood community opposed it, citing concerns over, among other things, 36 diesel generators and fuel storage tanks slated for the site. In Lebanon, The city council passed a water agreement with the Leap Innovation District despite community opposition. Meanwhile, the state quietly killed a proposed White River State Park expansion, citing financial reasons, a project that would have brought public benefit to downtown Indianapolis, yet will continue to support private company Elanco Animal Health's redevelopment of the site. Staying in the Circle City, tying back into the antitrust theme we discussed here earlier in the show, 2 of the 5 major television stations, WRTV and Wish TV, are set to consolidate after receiving an FCC waiver. The message is clear. Corporate interests get state backing and resources, while public needs get shelved. I don't know. Chuck, did I read that right?
Absolutely. And again, with the support of the Martindale Brightwood, them switching gears and for environmental justice. And this is a topic that I know environmental justice got labeled as a DEI type of thing and so on and so forth, which I'm sorry, environmental justice applies to all of us, not just some of us. But the fact that these data centers are pulling every trick in the book to get landed in places that will do especially in this case, the maximum damage to the surrounding environment. And yet we as a state, or our state quote unquote leadership, which I use very loosely, is looking for, hey, let's get you to do that. We want you downtown. Why? What is the benefit? They say, oh, well, it'll bring revenue. No, it won't. It won't bring jobs. It won't. All it's going to do is harm people. I mean, again, electric rates are going to continue to skyrocket because of that thing. It drives me nuts that these large entities, we bend over backwards. We see city, local governments bending over backwards to give them tax abatements, to give them everything they want to land whatever the hell project and be damned the consequences there afterwards. And then when all hell breaks loose later, oh, we didn't know that was going to happen. My God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess to speak on the Metro Blocks thing for a second, I guess the NAACP there in Indianapolis had previously supported this thing because they heard the nice words from the company. Oh, it's going to bring development to this long blighted parcel of land. You're going to see tax money that wouldn't have or otherwise come into the community, and then people that are actually there that have to live with it are like, hey guys, what the hell? But Sharon, it all of this with tying the Mississippi story to the Indiana story and all of it in the White River Park development, it's like socialized losses, private benefit, right? Like, when public goods get divvied up, the spoils always seem to go to the already successful, the already wealthy, those who have donated largely to our politicians.
Absolutely. And I actually want to touch on the Wish WRTV story, because that happened in Fort Wayne over 20 years ago. That happened in 2005. I was actually working as an intern at Wayne TV the spring that happened here in Fort Wayne. And so I saw the impacts of what happened kind of at a personal level, but also as it's been now over 20 years, I've seen how it has very much changed how Fort Wayne does news. You're not getting that diversity of thought that you were getting. And it goes back to antitrust and monopoly that we were talking about, where when you're not getting diversity of thought in your news and you're getting the same stories, like literally it's effectively the same stories at 4:00 and 5:00. And when you're getting those same stories over and over again, it's just like, the folks that watch Fox News for hours upon hours at a time, or watch CNN for hours upon hours at a time, that starts to sink in. And that not having that diversity of thought, really, there's a reason why we had antitrust in place and why we didn't want monopolies in place. And that seems to be something that the people who are running our economy have forgotten. Well, maybe they haven't forgotten about it. Maybe that's something they want because they've decided that lines their pockets. But it is definitely something that is becoming more and more problematic, it seems, year after year.
Yeah, 100%. And, this isn't the first time this has happened in Indianapolis. CBS 4 and Fox 59 are owned by the same conglomerate. Now, I can't speak to Circle City Broadcasting and what their politics are, the company that's putting RTV and Wish TV together. But, you've got these big local TV conglomerates like Sinclair, like Nexstar, that have a political agenda that often lines up with the far right. And, speaking of the far right, let's talk about another place where kind of national and Indiana politics intersect. And, just as Christian nationalist extremists like Pete Hegseth and Mike Huckabee crusade in the Middle East, our own little crusader, Attorney General Todd Rokita, was on a rampage this week. Out in Iowa, that state rolled back the ability of local governments to enact gender identity protections with a new statewide ban. They follow Kansas, where a judge declined Tuesday to pause enforcement of a new state law that invalidated driver's license and criminalizes bathroom use for transgender residents. Well, this gives Todd ideas. And according to Alexandra Vacha at the Substack publication Transitics, Rokita is preparing to revoke trans people's documents just like his Midwestern compatriots. Now, ironically, an Indiana federal judge's abortion ruling last week could theoretically expand abortion access in other red states using the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, yet Rokita is suing to keep Indiana's near total abortion ban in place. But wait, there's more. Haitian nationals in Indiana fear deportation as their temporary protected status hangs in the balance. The Trump administration is urging the Supreme Court to revoke that status, and Rokita posted on social media, it's called temporary for a reason, seemingly mocking their plight. Finally, Rokita this week also pushed back against a court effort to halt a student ID voting ban before the 2026 election, determined to keep student IDs off the list of valid voting identification. So, pattern is clear. Rokita is using his office to advance a Christian nationalist agenda at the expense of vulnerable communities, be it women, immigrants, the trans community, or young voters. I don't know, a real grab bag of trash from our Attorney General this week. Sharon, where do you want to begin?
There's so much there. I think where I'm going to begin is I just really love how so many of our legislators like to legislate from social media these days. It's that is just absolutely delightful. It's great. I really am, as someone who had to make certain moves as a result, certain health moves as a result of Roe v. Wade being overturned for herself. I'm watching what's going on with abortion rights in this country very closely, because obviously I want women's health to be something that's taken care of. And so it's interesting that that could potentially overturn or expand abortion rights in other places. One of the things that people seem to forget is that we have religious freedom in this country, and that means all religions. This does not just mean Christian religion, and that is something that people seem to forget, and that's also freedom from religion. And so I really hope that this does stand, because as someone who moved forward with getting a hysterectomy in part because of Roe v. Wade being overturned, I don't want that for other people. And as far as all of the anti-trans legislation that we are seeing across this country, it is disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. There's no reason for it. People want to live their lives. They want to be able to work. They want to be able to vote. They want to be able to go to school and live as the people that they are. And I am so sick of seeing such a small subset of the population be constantly under attack as as we are experiencing under the guise of morality, we keep coming back to that, under the guise of morality, when we have so many other moral failings as a nation. And so the fact that this just keeps being a conversation is so absolutely disgusting to me. I'm going to end this on the note about temporary protection status. We have allowed these individuals into our country. There was a reason why they needed to come in the first place, whether it was because of hurricanes, whether it was because of corrupt government. The fact that we keep threatening all of these people from other places to take away their protection status, it goes back to the cruelty is the point, and it's just incredibly frustrating.
Haiti is not exactly the kind of place you want to get sent back to right now. I think I saw a story. I didn't put it in our notes this week, but there's a story that whatever government they have there right now, and it's always a crapshoot. And that there's a long history of why it's unstable in Haiti, and a lot of it has to do with the U.S. government. But there's their government and U.S. contractors are now like drone bombing folks in Haiti. And something like 1,200 people have been killed, including a lot of children. So yeah, Rokita wants to send these people back there. What an ass. Chuck, it's like he like to what Sharon was saying, he's always on social media. It's like government by trolling. This is not the way to I mean, he's not a legislator, but this is not the way to govern. Tee off on this tiny little man, please.
So first, I want to say one thing. Sharon, absolutely applaud how you stated that, especially with women's rights and abortion. And I resonate, and I feel for you on that. The second part, Rokita is a tiny individual, and the reason I say that is because you can see this in how he's attacking anything and everything. He in this fight with abortion, and the fact that somebody actually said, "Hey, wait a minute! It's against my deeply held religious beliefs that I should be allowed to have an abortion instead of vice versa." I mean. And I key this off because my own family, I mean, in the Jewish faith, the life of the mother is precious. Now, if the mother's life is in danger, okay, yes, health care should be administered without question, without fail, full stop, end of story. But if this schmuck has his way about it, we already have a horrible track record with maternal health and maternal death rates and fetal death rates due to this. And this is just if he wins this particular argument, that's just going to continue. So it really begs the question, if you're going to be pro-life, okay, pro-life of the mother, be pro-life of the family, be pro-life of the kid once born, for God's sake. I mean, I'm going to hold on that one because I could go off on that for a while. But this guy, again, and again, Sharon hit it beautifully. Freedom of religion should be recognized across the board. If you're Jewish, Muslim, pagan, heathen, take your pick, whatever. It shouldn't matter. Everybody should be entitled to believe what they need, what fits their truth, right? And it goes the same for trans people. Everybody should live their truth regardless. And it's not up to us to say you're wrong or I'm right. That should, humanity exists on a spectrum, and we should embrace that spectrum instead of demonizing it. And that's what these guys do. They demonize how humanity is on a large. And it's just absolutely
the whole party of small government branding really falls apart when they want to legislate your bedroom, your doctor's office, and your bathroom stall, right? Like and okay, well, it doesn't end with the Attorney General's office, right? So even as Indiana's schools struggle under financial pressure, Fox 59 this week highlighting the concern of parents and staff in Rush County fearing cuts in the face of mounting deficits there. State officials are putting resources into expanding Christian nationalism into public education. Secretary of State Diego Morales announced a statewide voter registration and poll worker recruitment initiative with Turning Point USA's high school branch, Club America. while Governor Braun and Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith announced at the governor's residence a new partnership to expand Turning Point into all Indiana schools and colleges. Braun framed this as defending freedom of speech, saying conservatives need to be, quote, as loud about your point of view as the other side has always exercised with high decibel levels. Where was Braun's defense of free speech last year when Indiana educators faced firings and calls for resignation for failing to show proper deference in the wake of Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk's assassination? Chuck, I mean, again, the irony, right? The free speech warriors, free speech for thee, but not for me. Or yeah.
No, you're hitting it dead on it. I mean, the hypocrisy is freaking. I mean, it's so thick you can choke on it because. Sorry, I got to frame this. Charlie Kirk was quite possibly one of the most objectionable human beings I can point to in recent history. However, and I categorize this, he should not have been assassinated. I mean, I disagreed with everything that came out of the guy's mouth, but it shouldn't have happened. However, to espouse one group, one small bastardization of Christianity, and it is a bastardization of what that religion espouses. And I was raised Presbyterian for 18 years of my life, on probation for good behavior, but just saying that you can, and again, I don't care, if they want to be bigoted at jackasses, okay, fine. Leave that out of the public space. I don't agree with it, but being in a land where we're free to have our beliefs, I don't have to agree with it. And in fact, I can stand up against what those things should be as a general of the general populace. But Turning Point USA is kind of like this reinvention of almost the Klan mentality in a lot of ways. And yet nobody is seeing that parallel of, what they're espousing. They're espousing this homogeneous, almost eugenics type of construct in starting young in our schools, for God's sakes. They're starting in high schools, but I guarantee they're not going to stop there. They're going to try and bring it through the entirety of what's left of the public education system, which let's face it, they're trying to dismantle that every which way they can. Sorry, going off on tangents.
They go hand in hand though, right?
They do. It's almost like an octopus where it's reaching around all the tentacles into various areas all the time. And it's, we've got to be aware of these things and knock these things down, because if that goes forward, I fear for our future in so many ways. It's not even funny.
Yeah. And Sharon, like when Braun says being as loud about your point of view as the other side has always been, like, number one, a couple things there. There's no analog on the other side, right? I think they like to suggest that, teachers, by very nature of being college educated people, are somehow indoctrinating our children into being accepting and quote unquote woke, right? But there's no like democratic or liberal political organization operating in schools the way they want Turning Point to operate. And when he says to be as loud about your point of view, what he's talking about is basically sanctioning hate speech. At least that's how I think of it.
So first off, I want to plug my own conversation that I had with you, Scott, where we actually talked about this. We talked about religious ed in schools and how religious ed in schools has actually been around for a really long time. We have this already. And it is, and the fact that already exists in schools, and yet we have this narrative where they're saying that, the other side has this agenda. It's incredibly confusing. But I go back to, so I was raised in a Christian household where I was going to church every week, multiple times, that type of thing. And I was uncomfortable with the fact that we had campus ministries in my high school. We had campus ministries at Purdue Fort Wayne, then IPFW, where I went to college. Those things existed. And as far as I know, they still exist. And so to say that that there are things that are being promoted where, both sides aren't able to tell their story or it is so confusing to me because I am aware that these things existed. Now, it's possible that they don't exist anymore. I will put that out there, but I don't think that's true. And it's possible that they don't like campus ministries because it's more non-denominational and Turning Point's not. I don't know. But it is just so baffling to me because the Christian agenda has been in our public schools for decades. I remember, I was there. And so it just is so, it's so baffling to me that now we feel like we have to step it up to this additional organization that really is total hate speech and just not inclusive at all. And I do want to offer a little disagreement to what Chuck said. I think Erica Kirk might be worse than Charlie. I think Erica Kirk might be worse.
Totally fair point.
So, well, yeah, let's. One of the things about this announcement with Mike Braun the other day is like there wasn't a whole lot of teeth behind it. Some of the other red state governors where they partnered with Turning Point are like threatening legal action for schools and districts that don't comply. Braun was more like, well, there should be political consequences and we should vote out those school boards, right? Well, just as Braun did not go quite as far right as some of his GOP counterparts in these other states, he also had a busy week hedging his bets on other fronts. He declined to sign a bipartisan needle extension passed by the state legislature, allowing it to become law without his signature rather than committing either way. On affordability, Braun held a press conference touting early results from Indiana's new energy cost approach, utilities meeting benchmarks, rate reductions, and investigation into major investor-owned utilities, and some short-term relief from NIPSCO up in the northern part of the state. But Democrats were quick to point out that GOP legislators shot down every amendment during the session that would have codified real accountability, right? Worth noting, those same utilities are among the biggest political donors in the state, particularly to Republicans. Meanwhile, as the Iran conflict drives Indiana's gas prices up more than any other state, we already have among the highest gas taxes in the country, thanks to a 7% use tax on top of the excise tax. Braun wouldn't commit to eliminating the use tax, as Democrats have long pushed for, but he wouldn't rule it out either. And while he's touting affordability on one front, he's proposing to turn I-70 into a toll road, charging drivers over $15 to cross the state in a passenger vehicle and $84 for semis, with tolling set to begin in 2029 to fund a $6.5 billion highway upgrade. Affordability, it seems, as just about any issue with this guy, depends on which direction Braun is facing at any given moment. Sharon, he doesn't seem to want to commit. This guy has had a very successful political career, not standing for anything.
Yeah, any Hamilton fans will be reminded of Aaron Burr when it comes to Mike Brown. The I-70 toll road very much disturbs me because there are enough roads that can be used as alternatives that people will just use instead, and those roads are not set up to be used in the way that they will be used. And it's just an additional tax on some of the most vulnerable populations in Indiana. I have family. Most of my family lives down in Terre Haute, Indiana. If they want to get to Indianapolis, they have to take, I think it's I-40, or they have to take I-70. They definitely have to take I-70 for at least part of it. And like I-70, to get to the airport in Indianapolis, you have to take I-70 for at least a little bit of it. And it is just such a major thoroughfare. That seems so intensely expensive, first of all. And it just, let's just take a step back even. To put the infrastructure in, to put a toll road in, how much is that going to cost us? Because it's not like toll booths are free. It's not like tolling systems are free. And then you have to pay theoretically people to man those systems. So where is that money
It's all
gonna come
automated
from?
now. They've done this down in Oklahoma. I had to go down there last year at one point. It's all by camera now, which raises surveillance concerns
even bigger problems
as well.
Yes,
you know,
exactly. But I mean, either way, like that's still infrastructure that hopefully doesn't exist. And I have a major problem with that, again, because we are the most heavily taxed gas tax in the country. You can go up here in Fort Wayne. It's pretty easy to go to both Michigan and Ohio. And if you happen to be going to either one of those places, you see gas drops considerably. And if you happen to be going to one of those places, you fill up if you are on the other side of the border. And so this is either going to lead to people not using Fort Wayne as good heavens, Indiana as the crossroads, or it's going to lead to alternative modes being taken and roads that aren't meant to be used for that purpose being used for that purpose. And, additional maintenance having to be done to those roads.
Yeah, they're going to push that burden down onto like local streets and smaller communities, and so it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, right, Chuck? And the whole thing, that's what Braun is doing with these things. He's like, oh, we're going to have affordability here, but over here we're going to charge you more. I mean, like, I don't know, shit or get off the pot, dude.
Well, the problem is that there's a couple things, and so. Sure. Again, hit the exact right point. If they tax I-70, I'm going to tell you right now, State Road 9 and US 40 are going to go nuts. And that's going to, and I look at this in the way of Hancock County, that is going to affect Greenfield. That's going to affect Fortville. That's going to affect Mount Comfort. All these different places that, let's face it, we're a rural country, or a rural county. We're growing, but I can tell you the systems are not there enough yet for our growth. And I can tell you right now they're planning another interchange out of 2 West in 2031. Okay, when that goes in, that's supposed to bring all these great things happen. Well, if they tax I-70, wait a minute, changes ballgame. And then here's the other point as far as the toll roads and stuff. You got transponders, you've got humans that have to work all those systems. How is that going to work? And how is that going to be funded? And for how long? For what exact purpose? So and then where does that data reside? Does it reside in secure servers where it should, or is it going to be put in, hey, data center, hold this. Oh, wait a minute, that's owned by China. Oh crap, what are we doing? Yeah, sorry. Again,
Iran, if you're listening, wipe our toll data. Yeah, no.
It goes back to that Russia comment.
It's nuts. And then they suggest that, oh, if folks are getting off the highway, there's more interchanges and it's going to bring development to these local communities, but it doesn't bring like good jobs. It brings like jobs working at gas stations and restaurants and like low wage jobs and not good paying jobs. It's
not to mention constant construction like we've seen in Indianapolis for the past yeah.
Well, and then look at this. You mentioned Indianapolis. Look at the state of the roads there. Like, and so I don't know. Instead of worrying about like expanding I-70, why don't we worry about fixing the roads we have? And then this doesn't even bring up Braun wanting to put in that Mid-States corridor down to Jasper, so his auto parts distributing company can more easily get their products onto the interstates.
But here's the thing that bothers me about any type of road construction. Okay, whether it's the interstate or this corridor thing he's talking about, we forget what's under these roads. We forget the utilities. We forget water, sanitary, stormwater is a huge one. We've had, all this rain has brought up flooding in many, many areas, and yet stormwater is almost never part of the real conversations that should be taking place, because how many people lose property, in these low-lying areas that build in floodways or in floodplains? Drinking water. We're faced with a huge set of circumstances trying to fix water infrastructure. Just taking, there's the lead service line replacements that are supposed to happen from 27 to 37. And I'm here to tell you, as a municipality, that is going to be an absolute nightmare, because the state doesn't care about it. Feds are not caring about it. There's not nearly enough money funded for it. So if he's going to tax, or if he's going to roll another tax in, let's put it where it actually needs to be in supporting human, the infrastructure that helps everybody as a whole. But it's going to go to his friends that are uber rich and his interests. Sorry, I went off.
Isn't that? No, you're right. That's how it always works, it seems. So let's talk about some more Republicans here now. In a way, the two demons on Mike Braun's shoulders he can't decide between represent the Hoosier GOP in a nutshell. Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, speaking in north central Indiana's Marshall County, suggested the Republican supermajority can be, quote, a blessing and a curse, claiming it shields lawmakers from consequences when they fail to advance conservative priorities. Tension that flared after Senate Republicans declined to pursue President Trump's push to redraw congressional districts to flip the state's two Democratic-held House seats back in December. Beckwith also raised eyebrows when a constituent challenged his selective use of scripture to justify policy, responding that government's job is to instill fear. His faction of the party is certainly looking to instill fear among moderate Republicans. And listen, moderate is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Moderate is working so hard, it's probably an immigrant in the form of a $5 million MAGA retribution campaign targeting the very Indiana state senators who defied Daddy Trump on gerrymandering, with U.S. Senator Jim Banks' Political Action Committee, Turning Point USA, and Club for Growth carpet bombing 7 state Senate races ahead of the May 5th primary. A remarkable sum to spend punishing insufficiently loyal Republicans in a deep red state. Now, the Senate District 38 race in Terre Haute illustrates this dynamic perfectly. Trump recently hosted his hand-picked candidate Brenda Wilson at the White House, among several others, and far-right attorney James Bopp, pictured on your screen there, is now trying to knock a same last name challenger off the primary ballot, claiming without evidence it's an establishment Republican dirty trick to split Brenda's vote and protect incumbent Greg Good. Meanwhile, former Indianapolis Republican Mayor Greg Ballard has launched the Lincoln Party, calling both major parties broken and toxic as he pursues the Secretary of State seat. That race is getting crowded, with incumbent Republican Diego Morales already facing intra-party challengers. On the Democratic side, legacy kid Bo Bai and small business owner Blythe Potter are vying for the nomination, and a newly formed Socialist Party of Indiana is also gathering signatures to get on the ballot. Their official kickoff party, by the way, is today in Terre Haute. Catch me there if you're in the area. But, Chuck, Republicans in disarray. I guess you love to see it. You like to see them spending resources fighting each other. I think that's good for Democrats. I also think it's good potentially if they're more extremist candidates get the nominations and really show the contrast between their outrageousness and Democrats. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thought of these different people coming into it, Republicans are having to spend resources in ways they did not plan on wanting to spend. So it actually helps the overall spectrum, because let's say some of these more extreme nuts get selected. Okay, fine. Then you're going to contrast them against the other candidates where they are more common sense. They are focusing on the actual reality and needs of people in their communities. Like, you hear Blythe talk about wanting to make voting systems more make more sense, to where everybody invests in the election process, where it's not so difficult, where we're not creating barriers for people to participate in the process. On the other side, that's all they want to do is provide, take barriers. They in the legislature wanted to reduce early voting, to what was it, 14 days? Or something along that line.
It was 16, but yeah, still not very much.
Right, exactly. When I heard that, I about blew a head gasket, and I loaded up Ethan Lawson and Senator Kreider with all kinds of emails saying, "Don't vote for this. This is insane." But the point is, they're trying to create an environment where it's harder for us, the general people, to guide our government, whereas the more intelligent side of the fence is wanting to make it easier for all of us to participate in the system. And that is what needs to be highlighted dramatically as we go forward. You'd mentioned the college ID thing being a part of it. That's that's, in a way, it is discriminating against college kids that may not have, maybe they elected not to get their driver's license, so they don't have that real ID. Well, what's wrong?
Any college campus worth its salt has a good bus system, right? You don't need your driver's license theoretically. So yes, it is specifically targeted at disenfranchising young voters.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's just, again, you look at it very dramatically, creating barriers or creating opportunities. And I think that's going to be highlighted if these more extreme nuts, people get it too.
Well, Sharon, I want to speak about that Secretary of State right a little bit. That's the office that's responsible for, voting and making things accessible to folks. And, Chuck mentioned Democrats, particularly Mrs. Potter there wanting to put out more voting information and really expand the franchise. And then you've got Ballard, who is, as Republicans go, a moderate getting into this race. I don't know if him getting involved sort of splits the conservative vote and helps Democrats or not. What I will say is the Lincoln Party is not a very apt name for what he's trying to do. Lincoln, if anything, was not a bland centrist. That man was a radical liberal in his time, was he not?
Absolutely. I will say, as much as I, I am a big supporter in general of us moving away from a two-party system. Very big supporter of that. That's what we see in other countries where they have what I would argue is a healthier democracy than what we currently have. So to see in Indiana that for this Secretary of State race that is just heating up, this movement towards having what sounds like 4 high-profile races, that gives me a little bit of goosebumps. I find that to be a little bit exciting. I do hope that all 4 of those races, Democrats included, develop a very strong party platform for what they intend to accomplish. Quite frankly, I would love for us to have a strong party platform for Democrats across the state. That'd be great. But especially for that Secretary of State role, I feel like Life has a really good solid understanding of what that role should be. I haven't heard Bo's approach, and I haven't heard, some of these other approaches. But I would encourage that if they are going to take these stances of making additional of moving forward with additional parties, make sure that you are taking a solid stance so that way we understand where you're coming from. Because I feel like if we understand where other parties are coming from and we can see ourselves in those other parties better, it's more likely that they are going to be successful. I could be wrong, but I really think that just as someone who is a political nerd, it makes me really excited to hear that that in Ruby. No, we're not ruby red. We are purple. But in Indiana, where this is not something you generally hear being talked about, that we are starting to hear about more parties starting to actively participate in the democratic process.
It really illustrates that people across the political spectrum are understanding that the system that we have as it is broken. It doesn't work the way we want it to. I don't know necessarily if the way some of these folks are approaching it is the best idea. I'm not sure the way Ballard approaching it's the great idea. Look, I'm going to this Socialist Party of Indiana lunch event later today. I'm not sure if that's the right approach either, but it's certainly worth trying. We certainly all want more parties. We all want more choices. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out, right? Finally, on a bit of light-ish news this week, we will look at our neighbors to the east in Ohio, where Ohio State University President Ted Carter resigned this week after admitting to a, quote, inappropriate relationship with someone seeking public resources. Well, what does this have to do with Indiana other than the fact that we like to see Ohio State suffer? Well, it's got me thinking about whether another university president with inappropriate relationships should resign. I use Pam Whitten, whose ongoing inappropriate relationship with MAGA has generated a much longer list of offenses. While Carter had the decency to resign over one controversy, Whitten has racked up at least 10, refusing to negotiate with graduate students, intimidating dissenting faculty, deploying armed state troopers with a sniper on the roof of the Indiana Memorial Union against campus protesters, receiving a historic faculty no confidence vote, plagiarism allegations she won't address, undermining shared governance while welcoming Mike Braun's takeover of IU's Board of Trustees, accepting the elimination of nearly 200 degree programs, attempting to censor the student newspaper, handing out raises to administrators while cutting budgets for everyone else, and my personal favorite, tying her own tenure to football coach Kurt Cignetti's contract. Ohio State's president did the right thing. Governor Braun's concierge board of trustees won't remove Pam. So alumni, students, parents, donors, especially looking at you guys, and all concerned members of Hoosier Nation must continue to apply pressure. You can start by signing the petition linked in at the end of today's show notes. Chuck, any remarks regarding IU, regarding Pam Whitten, regarding the Ohio State president?
I think you hit it pretty well, Scott, that the guy knew he screwed up. He said, I'm going to step down. He actually showed some modicum of understanding the gravity of what that could do as far as damage in faith and confidence in that institution. Whereas Whitten is oblivious to any kind of negative impact because she thinks there is cover provided by this structure that Braun has put into place and has, hand chosen these folks of thou shalt do this. Well, okay. Doesn't mean it's the right thing. And unfortunately, I think in the long run, it's going to damage, it's going to damage the school and the community it surrounds because of these things. Again, it comes back to what kind of human do you want to be? And, if you're in a leadership position, you should have the ability to realize that if I screw up, I'm not fit to lead this particular organization. Well, she's not saying she's screwing up because she's being empowered by the structure of power that's at play. So we need to change that to make her say, I want to get out of this. Theoretically.
Yeah, gee, Sharon, it's like they hired her to damage IU.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So I think back to the mid 2000s when they played this exact game with Purdue. I was a part at that point. I was a student at Purdue. I was planning on making my career at Purdue Fort Wayne, or then IPFW. And they did the exact same thing where they made it where the governor got to appoint the board of trustees to Purdue University. And then lo and behold, Mitch Daniels got appointed as president at the end of his tenure as governor. And then everything about Purdue, in my opinion, changed. At least at the Purdue Fort Wayne campus. I don't know about at the West Lafayette campus, but at the Purdue Fort Wayne campus, it changed, including the name. It happened over the course of several years, but it definitely went from a place that I personally love to a place that I barely recognize. And I see that happening now with IU, but it's going to happen at a much more detrimental pace because there are so many IU campuses across the state of Indiana. And I don't know how those are going to be impacted as a result of everything that is happening. But I remember when I started seeing this movement of they were going to allow IU's trustees to be appointed by the governor or by the governor's office at IU. And it is something that had I been in office, I would have adamantly voted against, because I've seen how it's impacted Purdue over the last 14, 15 years or so. And I don't want it to happen to IU.
Yeah, it's disappointing to see, but you knew it was coming. It's the overall attack on education. They do not want, we've talked about it earlier. We talked about it with Turning Point. We talked about it with the grade schools, the high schools, the colleges. They don't want capable of critical thought. They want people who are easily controllable. Unlike us. So thank you guys for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. Where can the good folks find you? Sharon, you're running for State House in District 81. How can folks learn about your campaign and or help out?
Yes, please. Lots of help needed. I am in a primary, so you can go to www.electsharonwight.com. That is WIGHT.com, or you can go to www.facebook.com/electsharonwight. Again, WIGHT. I hope to hear from many of my constituents. Definitely want to work towards making Indiana a better place, because we've been struggling. Thank you.
As we've detailed throughout the course of the show, there's a big mess to clean up. We need good folks like you there in Indianapolis to do that. Chuck, hey, you're also responsible for cleaning up messes in a way, right? As a water infrastructure guy, where can folks find you on social media?
So you can look me up. I'm on Instagram, Substack, Facebook. Definitely, you can look me up, Chuck Gill, or MS2 Gill SW. You'll find me. Also, in Hancock, Indiana Democrats. If you go there and sign up for our newsletter, we have a candidate forum coming up on the 26th for our local candidates and also our congressional candidates. So please jump in on that, participate. I think it'll be a great time. So we'll have it streaming on Zoom, and eventually be on the lookout for a more localized podcast that may formalize here in our area to come. So.
Oh, fantastic. What congressional district are you guys in there in Hancock County, Chuck?
Congressional District 6.
That's what I thought. Well, hey, conveniently enough, this week on Progressive Indiana Network, Derek Holder has 3 interviews with Congressional District 6 candidates. He's got Cindy Worth on Monday, David Boyd on Wednesday, and Corey Amix on Friday. So check those out. Hold 'em Accountable podcast. I will be back live on these channels Tuesday night with Senate District 15 candidate Chloe Andis, fresh off of our debate in that race yesterday. Interested to hear what she has to say. We've got another debate coming up Thursday night for House District 70. That's down in southern Indiana, Harrison, Clark, Lloyd counties, parts of those, Washington maybe. Also a District 58 debate next Saturday coming up. Thursday morning, Concerned Clergy of Indianapolis podcast drops on Progressive Indiana Network. And then Saturday, we will have the latest from Brianna Newhart, the recovered Republican. Lots of content coming your way here from PIN. I saw a finger there, Chuck. What do you got?
Sorry, real quick. I screwed up on the date. It was March 29th for our candidate forum. My bad. I was thinking of another event.
Very good. No, thank you for the correction. And Sharon?
I also have one more thing. I have a in-person, it could be a debate. It could be a Q&A next Saturday morning at the Allen County Democratic Party breakfast meeting starting at 10:30.
Fantastic. All right. Well, if you're up in the Fort Wayne area, go see Sharon there. And if you're in Congressional District 6, go up to Hancock County and see Chuck on the 29th. But until then, please be sure to give us a follow on social media. You can find me at Who's Left on most of your social media sites. That's HOOS Left. You can DM me there with feedback, tips, ideas, or concerns. You can email me directly at scott@whosleft.com. Also, please subscribe to Progressive Indiana Network. Again, the website there is progressiveindiana.net. We could also use a follow on social media at our full spelled out name on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle and follow us on Blue Sky and TikTok at PIN Indiana. Anyway, until next week, this has been Who's Left This Week. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.